So the state has to go by the dictates of the church. The promise to prevent or destroy popular governments wherever found and to reestablish monarchy where it had been set aside.
They're doing it in a way that makes the people feel that this is still what they need and what they want to happen.
So the three people that spoke out and against the Jesuits all died on...
They all died on July 4. That's
two of them on the same day in the same year.
We see a lot of these days showing up a lot through history where they repeat.
This is history, and we need to understand this.
They can control the press in 1,000 secret ways. Who controls the source? Were the Jesuits involved in the founding of America? What did the founding fathers say about the Jesuits? We're going to talk about that today in today's episode of Truth Matters. I'm Wendy Goubej, and here's my co-host, MacKenzie Drebit. And we also have our research assistant, Jacob Downs, with us. Welcome, Jacob.
Thank you.
Nice to have you here. And today we're going to start with looking at what did the founding fathers say about the Jesuits. Our first quote is from John Adams. He was a president, to John Taylor. This is written in 1814. We curse the Inquisition and the Jesuits, and yet the Inquisition and the Jesuits are restored. Oh, my soul, I am weary of these dismal contemplations. When will mankind listen to reason, to nature, or to revelation?
Wow. That is quite the quote.
So he was saying how the Jesuits are coming back. They're back and they're restored. And nobody seems to get it. Here's another letter from John Adams to Thomas Jefferson. I do not like the late resurrection of the Jesuits. Shall we not have swarms of them here? If ever any congregation of men could merit eternal perdition on earth and in hell, it is this company of Loyola. Our system, however, of religious liberty must afford them an asylum.
And I just want to add to what you said there, Wendy. He says here in the red words, shall we not have swarms of them here? As many shapes and disguises as ever a king of the gypsies. In the shape of printers, editors, writers, schoolmasters. I have lately read Pascal's letters over again in 4 volumes of the history of the Jesuits. So he knew that the danger that this group posed to America.
Yes.
And like we said before in the last video, how they will infiltrate and influence all branches of government and in churches and in the trades he mentioned here, printers, writers, editors,
schoolmasters, teachers.
Very secretive. And he was very learned on this subject. As he says here, he has 4 volumes of certain books.
Yes, and they come in different disguises. And Jefferson wrote back to him. He said, I know nothing of the history of the Jesuits you mentioned in 4 volumes. Is it a good one? So he had never read those books. But he says, I dislike with you their restoration because it marks a retrograde step from light towards darkness. So it's a step back. John Adams continues in letters to Jefferson, my history of the Jesuits is not elegantly written, but is supported by unquestionable authorities, is very particular and very horrible. Their restoration is indeed a step towards darkness. I wish we were out of danger of bigotry and Jesuitism.
So they're having this nice little conversation back and forth, and they both are in agreement that this is bad news.
That's
coming
right.
to America.
Yes. And he wrote another letter to Thomas Jefferson a couple months later. This society of Jesuits has been a greater calamity to mankind than the French Revolution or Napoleon's despotism or ideology. It has obstructed the progress of Reformation and the improvement of the human mind in society much longer and more fatally.
These are some very personal letters as well that they're saying, because they were forefront in seeing the switch of first leaving Europe, then being in America, and now the Jesuits starting to make a foothold back in America, and what that looks like. Right now, we're very desensitized to all of this.
Yes.
You know, we see all sorts of things happening. We're not very educated on the history and what these guys are actually about. But they were right there when it was starting to happen and trying to stop it in a sense, but how are you going to stop it? I mean, they're so secretive that they were just infiltrating in all areas of life, like they were mentioning. Now we have this quote from Marquis de Lafayette. It is my opinion that if ever the liberties of this country, the United States of America, are destroyed, it will be by the subtlety of the Roman Catholic Jesuit priests. For they are the most crafty, dangerous enemies to civil and religious liberty. They have instigated most of the wars in Europe. That's a very strong statement too.
It is. And it's almost prophetic because it says, if ever the liberties of this country are destroyed, and they are being,
Yeah.
it will be by the subtlety of the Roman Catholic Jesuit priests. And if people understood that, if only people did understand that, because how much of what is going on is a result of this subtlety that has been working underground and in secret this whole time.
Yeah.
And another person that had a lot to say about the Jesuits was Samuel Morse.
He's the inventor of the telegraph.
Yes.
Yes.
And he has this statement here. And I just want to say before I started reading this, we're going to be doing a lot of reading.
Yeah.
So don't get lost. Don't, turn this off because it's a lot of reading. This is history and we need to understand this.
Right.
Because all these people had something to say on this subject.
Right. And these are real people from the past who are telling us their experiences and what they understood.
And very prominent people. I mean,
Yes.
Samuel Morse, the inventor of the Morse code,
Yes.
who knew that he was doing writing about the Jesuits?
Right.
And I'll start reading here. I'm going to start reading at the top because we need some context. Let us examine the operations of this Austrian society, for it is hard at work all around us. Yet here in this country, from one end to the other, at our very doors in this city, from a machinery of such a character and power, we shall doubtless be able to see already some effect. With its headquarters at Vienna, under the immediate direction and inspection of Metternich, the well-known great managing general of the diplomacy of Europe, it makes itself already felt through the Republic. Now, we're going to be talking about the Council of Vienna in a few moments.
Okay.
But he goes on, its emissaries are here. And who are these emissaries? They are Jesuits. This society of men, after exerting their tyranny for upwards of 200 years, at length became so formidable to the world, threatening the entire subversion of all social order, that even the Pope, whose devoted subjects they are, and must be, by a vow of their society, was compelled to dissolve them. We talked a little bit about that in the last video about how Pope Clement had actually expelled the Jesuits for a time. And he goes down at the bottom here. And do Americans need to be told what Jesuits are? If any are ignorant, let them inform themselves of their history without delay. No time is to be lost. Their workings are before you in every day's events. They are a secret society,
Wow.
a sort of Masonic order with superadded features of most revolting odiousness and 1,000 times more dangerous.
Wow.
And people are so oblivious.
Yes.
They have no idea. Some people now are starting to talk about the Jesuits, but really, they don't fully understand what this order is about and how diabolical and how deep these roots go into society and how many are potentially doing normal things that you don't even notice.
He goes on, they are not confined to one class in society. They are not merely priests or priests of one religious creed. They are merchants and lawyers and editors and men of every profession, and no profession, having no outward badge in this country by which to be recognized. They are about in all your society. They can assume any character that the angels of light or ministers of darkness to accomplish their one great end, the service upon which they are sent, whatever that service may be. Mm-hmm. They are all educated men, prepared and sworn to start at any moment, in any direction, and for any service, commanded by the general of their order, bound to no family, community, or country, by the ordinary ties which bind men, and sold for life to the cause of the Roman pontiff.
Wow.
It is so unbelievable that this is even a reality.
Right.
Now, I wish that more people were kind of like this for God's cause.
Yeah.
That they were willing to do anything for God's cause.
Right.
But when you see this, that puts most people to shame. Their dedication, I mean, they become nothing.
Right.
Right? Now, we should be doing that as Christians.
Right.
We should be saying, you know what? It's not about me, it's about Christ. You know, John the Baptist said, I become less so he can become more. But this is on a whole nother level. This is not to God, though. This is to the pontiff and to their general.
Yes.
Right? And they're doing heinous acts in the name of the Society of Jesus.
Right. And it continues here. These are the men at this moment ordered to America. And can they do nothing, Americans, to derange the free workings of your democratic institutions? So he's saying these men are being sent to America. Can they not, and do they not, fan the slightest embers of discontent into a flame? Those 1,000 little differences which must perpetually occur in any society into riot. So they're behind the riots. They're behind the discontent, and quell its excess among their own people as it suits their policy and the establishment of their own control. Now, that doesn't mean they're behind every riot in the United States or even the recent ones. This was happening in his day there.
But that does mean that they look at all these situations, and even if they don't start it, they may aid it to get more severe if it so suits their end.
Right. And it goes on, they can control the press in 1,000 secret ways. So people have talked often about how the press is controlled. The press is, not telling us the truth. It's one-sided and so forth. I would be very interested to know how many Jesuits are behind that. I've even heard that the press actually has only one issuing office that issues press to all the same stations. Everybody gets the same news story. And that's why you can take the same sentence being said by 1,000 different news anchors all saying the same, because they're getting the same story from the same source. Who controls the source? That is the good question. Mm-hmm. They can be Democrat today and aristocrat tomorrow. They can out-American Americans in admiration of American institutions today and condemn them as unfit for any people tomorrow. So they could be the most patriotic American that you ever heard of.
So basically just what we said before, the end justifies the means.
That's right.
They can take the form, as he said here, they can be a Democrat today and an aristocrat tomorrow, and we can add they can be a Republican the next day.
Right.
It doesn't matter.
Right.
Both sides, they're influencing both sides, and that's why we're counseled not to get involved in things like that.
And that's why actually we're told not to vote.
Right.
Because you don't even know who you're voting for. Mm-hmm. You don't know who's behind the person that you're voting for, what's motivating them.
And this doesn't mean that all the individuals are Jesuits.
No.
But the Jesuits are doing their best to influence all of these individuals. Because if they just did all the tasks, I mean, that they would be in full control, right? But that's not necessarily possible at this moment. So they keep influencing all of these individuals, and therefore growing their influence, growing their reach into all sectors.
Right. And if a person goes to a Jesuit school, then there's an extremely good chance that they've been influenced by the principles that are being taught there and are going to come out doing the bidding of the Jesuits. Whether they know it or not, they've already been formed into this, because people who go to school, they're young, they're formable, right? And they come to learn, they come to get the information, the knowledge from the professors. So they're going to be instilled with those ideas.
Right.
And they, without even knowing it, might be the very puppets of these people. Now, you talked about they could be left, they could be right. That, and they could be influencing both sides. And that is something called the Hegelian dialectic. And we see that on the next slide. And it's a way to influence society, pushing from first the left, then the right, then the right, then the left, then the right. And it keeps going until you reach the middle, which is the synthesis that they're looking for.
So basically what they do is they'll take two opposing sides. If I could just use this example in politics again, you have, even in America, you'll have the left-wing politicians and ideas, and then you'll have the right-wing politicians and ideas. Now, in years past, America has leaned left a little ways. You know, they'll legalize certain laws and push a certain agenda to where people are so appalled by that side that they want to swing it to the right, and it goes all the way to the right. So you have thesis, you have antithesis, and both sides are being influenced by Rome in this sense. They're both influencing both sides. But then once it swings all the way to the right, you end up having a synthesis at the end, which unites both parties, that they agree on certain things. And that's how they get their agenda across. And that's how they're getting their agenda across.
And I think we've seen that just recently in America. You have Joe Biden, and the left and the Democrats were very strong. It made the Republicans very irate. And then that's how Trump came into power. Now he's completely on the right, and he's got Project 2025 people working in his administration, pushing the destruction of separation of church and state and all this. And that's making, of course, the Democrats upset now, right? So this whole upsetting discourse between the two is going to bring about something that is the agenda, that the ultimate agenda is what they want.
Going on, if you read this quote, it says, "But we recognize in the Roman Catholic priesthood and the Jesuit brotherhood two distinct political organizations, united in purpose and using religion as a mask for political purposes, as they always have done in all ages and countries. These we must and will oppose. We cannot do otherwise."
That's interesting.
So all these voices saying, keep this group out. We want nothing to do with them. They're bad news for the country. And we know nothing about it today.
Exactly.
Nobody knows anything about it.
I highly recommend that the viewers go and try to find these. They're available as PDFs online, and just read them. They'd be so interesting to see what was the thinking and the sentiments in the past and how they came to their conclusions. These people held very, very strong opinions, and you don't hold those strong opinions for nothing. There's a reason behind it. Now we're going to take a look at papal thoughts on religious liberty. We already reviewed this in previous episodes, so we're going to skim through it really quickly just to refresh everybody's memory. So we have Pope Gregory the 16th in 1832 saying, "This shameful font of indifferentism gives rise to that absurd and erroneous proposition which claims that liberty of conscience must be maintained for everyone." So in other words, he's saying, it's ridiculous. What do you mean you want religious liberty for everyone? And then we have from here, "From which totally false idea of social government, they do not fear to foster that erroneous opinion, most fatal in its effects on the Catholic Church." So it has a fatal effect on the Catholic Church's hold and the salvation of souls, that liberty of conscience and worship is each man's personal right. And of course, the next one, this is the syllabus of errors, where they list all the things that are false, that in their opinion, and this is one of them. It is error to believe that every man is free to embrace and profess that religion which, guided by the light of reason, he shall consider true.
They weren't satisfied with just sending people over. They wanted to overthrow the structure that the United States had. Remember, the Jesuits and the Catholic Church want a fascist form of government.
Right.
They want the union of church and state because that's what they had during the Dark Ages. So here we look at some of the plans they had, and this is the Congress of Vienna. Now, not many people know about this, but basically what this was a council that the monarchs of Europe had during these years, 1814 and 1815. And they met together, and they had this Congress, and these went on for various years. This was just the start of it. And what we're going to learn is that the Pope and the Jesuits were behind these meetings, and they had a specific goal for that. If we read on, simultaneously with the calling of the Congress of Vienna in 1814, Pope Pius VII restored the Society of Jesus, the Jesuit order, which had been abolished by Pope Clement IV, July 21st, 1773, on the grounds that it was immoral, dangerous, and was a menace to the very life of the papacy. Clement was promptly poisoned for his act. With the restoration of this order, the execution of the secret Treaty of Verona was placed in their keeping. The Congress of Vienna was a black conspiracy against popular governments, at which the high contracting parties announced at its close that they had formed a quote-unquote holy alliance. Now, that's a phrase that's come up again. We're going to talk about that again.
Yes.
During the Reagan administration. This was a cloak under which they masked to deceive the people. The particular business of the Congress of Verona it developed was the ratification of Article 6 of the Congress of Vienna, which was, in short, the promise to prevent or destroy popular governments wherever found and to reestablish monarchy where it had been set aside.
And that is very terrifying because of what's being said in America right now, that basically they want another monarch. They want a king.
Well, that's how what they're calling Trump sometimes.
Yeah.
But interesting that they didn't want this whole religious liberty movement going on in America to come to their countries. They didn't want popular government, in other words, government by the people, to come and take hold in their countries. They wanted to stick with monarchy. And there was another pope that I believe it was probably Pope Leo XIII, who actually was really sad when the monarchies started dismantling in Europe, because he was like, this is the way we like to operate. This is how we want Europe to be. It has to be controllable. And when you can control the monarchy, you can control the people. But clearly in Europe, they were unsuccessful because there are no monarchs anymore in Europe that control the country. They're all figureheads, just there for history's sake, but not really because they are involved in the government.
So these meetings went on for various years after the Council of Vienna. It didn't stop there. And now we have the Congress of Verona. Now, this was a secret Congress that was held. I believe it was 7 years later. The Congress of Verona met at Verona from the 20th of October to the 14th December 1822 as part of the series of international conferences or congresses that opened with the Congress of Vienna in 1814, 1815. So they met at this council, and here's some more about this. Let's read. The sovereigns of the Holy Alliance had massed large armies and soon entered into a pledge to devote them to the suppression of all uprisings of the people in favor of free government. And he desired to devote the Jesuits, supported by his pontifical power, to the accomplishment of that end. So here we get a glimpse of the power that was behind these councils and the power that was influencing their decisions. And if we read on, now this is interesting because on April 25th, 1916, U.S. Senator Robert L. Owen officially recorded the secret Treaty of Verona in the Congressional Record. Mm-hmm. The monarchs of Europe, collectively known as the quote-unquote Holy Alliance, and influenced by Rome, signed the following treaty in Verona. So this is what they signed. This is what they agreed to. Now, this is before we get to where they signed, but listen to what this says. This is Mr. Owen speaking. I wish to put in the record the secret Treaty of Verona of November 22nd, 1822, showing what this ancient conflict is between the rule of the few and the rule of the many. I wish to call the attention of the Senate to this treaty because it is the threat of this treaty that was the basis of the Monroe Doctrine. Mm-hmm. Now, some people may have heard of the Monroe Doctrine, but they don't actually know how we got the Monroe Doctrine.
Right.
And this is how we got that. It throws a powerful white light upon the conflict between monarchical government and the government by the people. The Holy Alliance, under the influence of Metternich, the Premier of Austria, in 1822, issued this remarkable secret document.
All right, notice what it says here. The undersigned, specially authorized to make some additions to the Treaty of the Holy Alliance, after having exchanged their respective credentials, have agreed as follows. Article 1. The high contracting powers, being convinced that the system of representative government is equally as incompatible with the monarchical principles as the maxim of the sovereignty of the people with the divine right, engage mutually in the most solemn manner to use all their efforts to put an end to the system of representative governments in whatever country it may exist in Europe, and to prevent its being introduced in those countries where it is not yet known. Article 2 talks about the liberty of the press, which is the most powerful means used by the pretended supporters of the rights of nations to the detriment of those of princes. The high contracting parties promise reciprocally to adopt all proper measures to suppress it. So they want to suppress the freedom of press as well. Article 3, convinced that the principles of religion contribute most powerfully to keep nations in the state of passive obedience, which they owe to their princes. The high contracting parties, those are of course the people taking part in this treaty, declare it to be their intention to sustain in their respective states those measures which the clergy may adopt.
What form of government is that?
So who are the clergy?
The priest, the church.
Right. That's right.
So the state has to go by the dictates of the church.
That's right. And then jumping down, the contracting parties join in offering their thanks to the Pope for what he has already done for them and solicit his constant cooperation in their views of submitting the nations.
I think that's pretty clear who was behind this.
It is. It is.
That is unbelievable. And we have these meetings. I mean, it's public now.
Yeah.
And people can go read it. So we recommend you guys actually read the documents and go look for yourself and see that this is actually the case. Mm-hmm. That these plans have been implemented, talked about and implemented. And I mean, we can see this working down the line secretly and behind the scenes. It's not just overtly, hey, we're switching this over now, we're going to honor the Pope and it's going to be a monarchy again. And they're not saying it like that. Mm-hmm. They're doing it in a way that makes the people feel that this is still what they need and what they want to happen.
So we've come full circle back to this intentions of this treaty. But then they made a Monroe Doctrine that was intended to stop this from happening in the States.
It says, I'll read from the yellow, Canning called the attention of our government to it, and our statesmen then, including Thomas Jefferson, took an active part to bring about the declaration by President Monroe in his next annual message to the Congress of the United States This is the so-called Monroe Doctrine. The threat under the secret treaty of Verona to suppress popular government in the American republics is the basis of the Monroe Doctrine. This secret treaty sets forth clearly the conflict between monarchical government and popular government and the government of the few as against the government of the many. So basically what happened, the founders found out about this secret treaty that was going on at Verona. They found out about all this, and they had to come up with a plan to stop it. So they spoke with one another, and as it mentions Thomas Jefferson here, eventually got with President Monroe. And the plan was to keep the monarchs of Europe over there, and we stay over here. And like it says here, that was the basis of the Monroe Doctrine. The Monroe Doctrine basically said to the people of Europe, stay over there, we'll stay over here, and if you come over here, that's an act of war. And that's what he's bringing out in here. So the reason why we have the Monroe Doctrine is because of indirectly of the Jesuits.
Right.
Now, I just want to point out, because some people may be wondering how the monarchs of Europe and the Jesuits would have accomplished that. And the answer is we don't know exactly how everything would have been done because it didn't happen. It was stopped.
Right.
The Monroe Doctrine was passed and things were stayed for a little while. But we do get a glimpse of this. If we go back to Samuel Morse, he says, to return to the subject, it is in the Roman Catholic ranks that we are principally to look for the materials that are employed by the Jesuits, and in what condition do we find this sect at present in our country? We find it spreading itself into every nook and corner of the land. Churches, chapels, colleges, nunneries, and convents are springing up as if by magic everywhere. An activity hitherto unknown among the Roman Catholics pervades all their ranks, and yet whence the means for all these efforts? And I'll go down to the bottom. Is it not notorious that the greater part are foreigners from the various Catholic countries in Europe? Immigration has of late years been specially promoted among this class of foreigners, and they have been in the proportion of 3 to 1 of all other immigrants arriving on our shores. They are from Ireland, Germany, Poland, and Belgium. From about the period of the formation of the Leopold Society, the Catholic immigration increased in an amazing degree. They are mostly, if not all, Roman Catholics. Be it remarked, for Belgium is a Catholic country, and Austrian vessels are bringing them here. So one of the ways that they were going to accomplish their goals, as far as the Council of Verona was concerned, was they were going to send thousands and thousands of Catholic immigrants to the shores of America, and they were basically going to take it over from within.
Right.
Do we see something similar today?
Yeah, I think we do.
We absolutely do. Now, the funny difference is that most of those people are already in the country. So if we shut down immigration now, and it's presented as a different reason why we need to shut down immigration,
Right.
but these people have already come in and have infiltrated all areas of society. This, what was being written, is many years ago.
That's
and
right.
we are far down the line now. But this is the history, and it's really important that we're aware of what they were seeing, because we're totally oblivious to this today.
Samuel Morse continued in his book, and he said, the author undertakes to show that a conspiracy against the liberties of this republic is now in full action under the direction of the wily Prince Metternich. So just another example of all these people who believed and saw what was happening.
Interestingly enough, this quote comes from the life of James Monroe, which says, from the contemporary newspaper accounts, we glean these facts. For several days, this is speaking of James Monroe's death, had been momentarily expected. He expired without a struggle. At 3:30 in the afternoon of Monday, July 4th, as John Adams and Thomas Jefferson had died on the 4th 5 years before, Monroe's death added to the wonder. as though a power aloft had taken cognizance of the particular patriotism of these mortal men and had translated them.
Oh, that's interesting.
So the three people that spoke out and
Against
the Jesuits and stopped their plans, in a sense, all died on.
they all died on July 4th.
They all died on July 4th.
That's
Two of them on the
interesting.
same day in the same year. Now that's interesting.
Very interesting.
Remember the Jesuit oath and how they said they would use whatever means, the poison cup, the strangling cord. It's very interesting how these people died.
And they never forget.
I never forget, no.
Yeah.
They seem to always do these things on very specific dates. It's not just random happenings. We see a lot of these dates showing up a lot through history where they repeat and they repeat and they repeat. And that's another sign that it's not just happenstance that these people are dying on these dates.
Very interesting. Well, that wraps up our episode for today. And we will continue with a final look at America's Secret Beginnings on the next episode. Thank you for joining us.